Hi everyone, I'm Ashlyn. I chose Hurricane Camille. It was a monster storm of the Gulf Coast by Philip Earn. Really great book. Encourage everyone to read it, and we'll get into kind of the background of it. So Hurricane Camille hit on August 17th, 1969 as a Cat 5 hurricane in Mississippi. It was the one out of three Cat 5 hurricanes to ever hit the U.S. She was quite large and a really big storm. Uh, Mississippi also has 26 miles of coastline that was lined with marinas, beach cottages, restaurants, souvenir shops, just like the beach town I grew up in, so it felt very familiar to me. And then all of it got flattened by Hurricane Camille. Really, the only structures that were left were some stairwells, some steps, some walls, but not a lot. Um, and the residents who decided to not evacuate and lived through Camille had some very harrowing stories. They were watching their loved ones drown. They were watching their neighbors drown. They were hanging on to trees. It was a very intense when it talked about their story, but it was very well done. And then it just destroyed everything in its path and then continued up through the United States. So major impacts of this event: $11 billion worth of property damage was occurred, 5,662 homes destroyed, 13,915 homes with major damage, so not really livable, but not completely destroyed. 172 deaths were in Mississippi, where 347 deaths total included those from Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Produced 24-foot storm surge on top of a 10-foot tide, so basically a 34-foot wall of water. Quite destructive, and the Gulf already is very shallow, so that it makes it even easier for storm surge to be an issue. And then it dropped 10.6 inches of rain within a 16-hour period in Mississippi on top of all the other water. So it was a very big water. So then once Camille, moved inland, it moved towards Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. But in doing that, it caused a cascading effect, which flooded the James River and dropped 31 inches across the area, which then caused landslides, torrential downpours, flash flooding, and there's mountains. So a lot of infrastructure was getting impacted, such as the highways, and about 133 bridges were destroyed or really impacted. So that was quite large. And like I said earlier, there was 347 deaths. So that's a pretty significant death toll, especially from, the addition of just it being flooding. And what I thought was really interesting is that $480 million in aid came in after the storm. I mean, it was through a bunch of different programs and different organizations, but it was really incredible that much had come in. And like Red Cross came in and was, buying all their stuff from local stores, so it was really helping the economy get back into it. So lessons learned: they definitely need a better warning notification system, and then they did work on getting that. Their evacuation routes were poor. The roads were in low-lying areas that gets easily inundated. So they worked with state and federal stakeholders to get better routes. They then instructed a 13.2-foot base elevation raise for all new construction. And then the federal government did the Federal Coastal Zone Management Act of 1972 to manage the shorelines, because they realized how much natural infrastructure is important and how it could really save a community. And then the Federal Disaster Relief Act of 1974, which allows to establish preparedness plans for the local and state government, and that's working with the federal government, so having a little more control and see on what's going on. The downside is that they had a lot of irregular repairs and rebuilding, not to the proper standards, because people just didn't care. They just wanted to fix their homes. And then the hazard mitigation opportunities were ignored because they're like, nothing can withstand a hurricane. Why should we even build to those standards when it's not going to do anything? And the really cool thing is that when Hurricane Frederick, well, it's not cool, but in my opinion, but when Hurricane Frederick came and hit them, they had 100% evacuations in Harrison County, which is huge. So clearly it had an effect on the people that lived there. Some strengths of this book really set the scene really well of 1969. It made it feel very familiar and normal prior to devastation. So then when they talked about the interviews of how terrifying it was a great transition that you really felt like you were there. And then it had a great historical background in Mississippi. Um, the interviews of the survivors, that's the best part, but it's terrifying and it definitely causes a lot of emotions. Especially since I was down in Southwest Florida during Hurricane Ian, so I kind of felt a lot of the same stuff that those people were feeling. The flow of the book is interesting, but it's not really cohesive, so it's kind of it jumps around, but at the end it makes a point, but it's not the best in my opinion. I don't like that it categories storm surge levels as with the hurricane categories because we don't do that anymore. We don't base storm surge levels off hurricane levels. And then some of the facts were very repetitive and lost some of the effect. Thank you.